Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Obvious Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Omar. We got Joy on the other line today. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. We actually want to talk about the interview and hiring process from a leadership standpoint and what you can do to make sure that you go into a winning interview itself. So to kind of give you a little bit of feedback, both Joy and I have experience in the past, not just as leaders, but also through the hiring process. I've created SOPs for a company that had at that time over 600 locations. I've recruited nationally for them. I've recruited not just entry-level positions, but also management from a local level leadership, right? Store managers to district regionals, as well as experience with C-suite interviews, right? And hiring. So one of the things that, and Joey, feel free on this one, right? Because one of the hardest things for leaders to understand is that when you're going into an interview, you're interviewing to see why these people should not be a fit for the role that you're interviewing them for. Because in my opinion, if they've already made it to that far into the process, if I'm looking at a resume and I'm like, I like this on paper, right? I give them a call, or I have one of my recruiters call them, and they pass a sniff test on the phone interview. It really is becoming all right, so why wouldn't this person be a fit for either the organization or for the role, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You should be going into that interview with a good idea that this might be one of your ideal employees, right? Because they've gone through a couple of screening processes,
Yep.
and that person's made it that far, right? You should be looking for the attributes that displayed that through those processes, right? So
Oh yeah.
to pull it out of them, and make sure you're looking for the best. But also there's things that you got to look out for warning signs as well.
And I find this kind of sad. Some people do this unconsciously, right? And I think you've done this before, Joey, but like this process. So one of the things that I've implemented is a thing called the STAR method. Are you familiar with the acronym?
I'm not.
No? All right. And you guys can follow along right on this one. But the STAR method STAR is an acronym. It's for situation, task, action, and results. So pretty much I'm going in looking for those four things when I ask you a question, right? And if you are actively looking for positions right now in the job market, this is actually something that will also help you in being able to land the interview once you've gotten into that process, right? But as a leader, when you're going into an interview, you need to have a list of questions already lined up, a list of questions that you have a really good understanding of what you're looking for, not off the cusp. Oh man, I got my coffee. I'm about 5 minutes late, but it's all right. They're waiting for me. Let me see what kind of questions they have on the interview guide that they provided. Like, no, you should have like an actual list of questions ready for the role, for the location, things that are pressing in that area, right? I don't care if you're interviewing for an entry-level position or if you're interviewing for like a district manager or regional. You need to know what are some things that are very important in that position that you are going to hit on, because you want to find out, to your point, Joy, if this person is not a fit for what I'm looking for, right? And that's kind of like the biggest thing. You shouldn't go in looking, well, is this person really a fit? If they made it through the interview process, they're a fit as far as those interviews are concerned. If they're sitting in front of you, whether it's an in-person interview or if you're doing it over virtual, right? Because obviously some people do that, remote positions, hybrid, all that stuff, right? They've already put their foot in the door. You're finding a reason why you need to shush them out and not let them through the door.
Right.
Right.
So one of the things, like in my experience with hiring, right, that's definitely one of the things that I mean, I guess I tried to focus on, hey, look, I'm going to ask you about a particular situation, right? What was your responsibility in that situation? What action did you take, right? And then what was the outcome, right? But so if we're going with the STAR method, that's situation, task, action, result, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, most definitely those are the things I'd be looking for. But when you're going through an interview, and see, this is why in-person interviews are so important, because sometimes when you ask a question and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've like, let's say you ask them, tell me about a time when you had to go out of your way to make a customer happy, whatever the case is," and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've done that many times." Okay, well, they hadn't even started on the actual STAR method, right? You didn't give me a situation, right? And then sometimes they start, okay, well, yes, that was the primary role of my previous job. We used to do that all the time. I can tell you about all the times that we make customers happy, right? But it doesn't talk about a
Those are
particular.
just red flags for me right there.
But you have to do your job as an interviewer to make sure that you are clear in that person's mind and refocusing them on what you're asking for. Maybe you didn't ask the question the right way, possibly, or maybe they didn't understand it the right way. Rephrase, right, and attack from a different angle so that you can dig deep, right? Because that's when you're going to find out if that person has an actual example, and they can talk about it, or if they're just kind of fluffing it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, big time. And if you're wondering why I just said that, what he was talking about was a red flag for me, guys, from the interview standpoint, if you're using the words we, when I'm asking you a question about what you have done, that's an instant red flag. It means that you actually did not do anything. Um, it was somebody else that was carrying the team. You weren't a big contributor to whatever was being done. Right. And unfortunately, when it comes to the interview process, like we're primarily talking about leadership and sales positions, right? There are times where, yes, you need to be a contributor as a team, uh, but not for the kind of roles that we're talking about, right? Because if you're listening, you're trying to get into leadership, you are in leadership trying to become better, or you're in sales wondering, once again, how am I going to jump into that next step of my career once I'm tired of the hustle and bustle of being, constantly on the phone or grinding, right? And that's going to be a huge thing. Now, in the whole interviewing thing, unfortunately, there's not a lot of great ways to train on this from a company standpoint that I have seen, right? Let me sit you in on the interview, and yeah, we'll debrief afterwards. But no real like actual training portion, unless you like jump through the HR, hoops, which that's just for me not a big thing, right? But one of the biggest things for Star is the fact that you can actually do a point system with it, because they don't have to hit the answer completely on the mark. Maybe it is an entry level position, but they have some really great examples. They just, to Joey's point, they can't really articulate what they're saying. That's why, as a leader, you need to go in understanding what questions you're going to be asking for the particular position, because you shouldn't be asking 100 different questions. In an interview, it shouldn't last more, especially for entry level positions. 45 minutes is like the top mark that you want to be at, right? Because honestly, within about 10, 15 minutes, you should already know if this interview should continue. And if it's a good interview, it should go the full, which is about 45 minutes in, right? Max would be an hour if you have really great rapport, but about 45 minutes is the cutoff mark for a good interview. And that will give you room for about 8 or so questions, right?
So I mean, and kind of to go along with that, though, like every time through the companies I've done interviewing with, a lot of times they give you an interview guide, and one of the things that I was trained on was you have to ask the same questions, at least the baseline questions, to every eligible person.
Candidate. Yeah.
Yes. Like, and that's to create a fair environment, I guess, for everybody, right? But on top of that, that doesn't mean that you can't ask,
Something above it.
right, something that pertains to that particular situation. You can ask more questions on top of that question, right?
Yep.
And that was one of the things, kind of like you're saying is, like there's a lot of red flags, right? When somebody says, "Oh yeah, I was great at my last job. This is pretty much the same thing. I used to get 150% all the time." Well, yeah, that's a result. But how did you get there, right? I mean, that's something we've talked about a lot.
No, and to your point too, with like the interview questions, right? I know, like with one of the organizations I was with, they would do and this is obviously most companies, you're going to do a personality, right, aptitude test for the position to see if you're a fit for the role that you're looking for. And then you would print out that packet and it would have interview questions for you to ask. But my issue with those is that it was always what's your gut feeling about how the individual did? And it shouldn't be a gut feeling, okay? Because you are human, we have biases. You need to be able to break it down to a way where it's systematic. Because at that point, too, that becomes a process. And if you've listened to our previous podcast, you'll understand that having a process will lead you to success a lot faster and more consistently, because a process can be taught from one person to another. A gut feeling cannot. Right. And that's where a lot of people fail. And I've dealt with old school leaders that, well, I really like this person because they talked up a storm and blah, blah, blah. That's cool. I don't care if you like them. I'm telling you, I sat down in the interview and the interview was trash. Yeah. Just because you like them, because you have a gut feeling, none of their examples hit on the mark. Yes, they're a talker, but all of their examples didn't lead to the actions that we're looking for, and definitely didn't lead to the results that we were looking for this particular role. Right.
I mean, you're hitting it on the head there, man, because on top of like listening to the person, right, listening to that candidate, like I think a lot of it boils down to you have to set the expectations of what you as the person asking the question is going to be doing when that person is talking about their answers, right? You need to set the expectation. Hey, I'm going to be taking notes about what you say, right? And maybe you put star, right? You write star on every one, and you're going to say, what was the situation, right? What was their task at hand? What action did they take, and what was the result? Because they need to hit on all of those things. You can rate them later, but you also have to make notes for yourself so that you can reference that afterwards.
Yep. And guys, listen, if you've never tried it and you're going to start doing it, it's going to take you some time to get comfortable with the method, right? And it is worth doing. It is one of the best things to implement. And like I said, it's a limit on the number of questions you have. You should not have a bank of 100 different questions. That is not feasible. As a leader, you need to go in understanding that you are going to train and develop these people. Even if they have some experience, they do not have experience with your particular organization unless they're a boomerang employee that quit and left and is now coming back, right? They have some experience that would be very relevant to your organization. For the 99% of other people, you need to go in knowing that I need to have a baseline understanding of where they're coming from, and know that I am going to help develop them, or the teams I'm going to put them on, those leaders are going to help develop and train them to get to where we need them at. But their baseline is what we need to ensure that they're going to be coachable, trainable, and that we're going to be a fit for success on both parties.
Man, that's powerful stuff right there, man. I'm telling you. So, hey guys, I definitely appreciate each one of you guys joining us for the conversation today. If y'all have any questions, comments about anything, please leave them down below for us. Also please subscribe if you want to hear about some other topic. We appreciate the suggestions.
Yeah, let us know what you guys thought about the topic. Don't forget, hit that like, subscribe button. And guys, we know we mentioned it before, but get ready because we have some really good stuff coming down the pipe that you're going to want to hear. We're going to have it open for a very small selection or a very small time frame. So just be ready to start seeing that come up. But once again, guys, thanks for listening in to the Obvious Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Omar.
I'm Joey.
And we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, guys. See y'all later.
And that brings us to the end of today's Obvious Leadership episode. Remember, every great leader starts with one step, and you're already on your way. Small changes lead to significant impact. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember that leadership is the key to unlocking extraordinary results.